You'll notice some of these same phrases from critical race theory because ultimately, as we will conclude in a moment, queer theory is neo-Marxism, the same as critical race theory, right? Because critical race theory encompassed this idea that that there's those who are oppressing and those who are oppressed. And the purpose of this was to have the oppressed overthrow the oppressors, to destroy the institutions, whether they're cultural institutions like the family or governmental institutions like capitalism, in order to usher in Marxism. That's why it's a neo-Marxist ideology. The same with queer theory. Queer theory is a neo-Marxist ideology that posits that sex is also hierarchical. Sex is also a system of those who oppress and those who are oppressed. And the only way to solve this dilemma that they have created is for the oppressed to throw off the oppressors. And by doing so, this will destroy cultural, social, and governmental institutions like the family, like parental rights, like the protection of children, and ultimately liberty and freedom and capitalism. And instead of those institutions, what will we have? We will have a system of Marxism where government is at least controls, if government doesn't own the entire means of production and dictate the values and the principles that people are allowed to believe and live and teach to their children. This is why it's a neo-Marxist ideology. This is what Gayle Rubin is talking about. This is what Gayle Rubin is talking about. And one of the ways, so she creates this diagram. She creates this diagram showing what she calls the sexual value system. And this is all part of the argument that there is no wrong sexual behavior as long as that sexual behavior is consensual. This is what she says. Figure 9.1 diagrams a general version of the sexual value system. According to the system, sexuality that is good, normal, and natural should ideally be heterosexual, marital, monogamous, reproductive, and non-commercial. It should be coupled, relational, with the same generation, and occur at home. It should not involve pornography, fetish objects, sex toys of any sort, or roles other than male and female. Any sex that violates these rules is bad, abnormal, or unnatural. Bad sex may be homosexual, unmarried, promiscuous, non-procreative, or commercial. It may be masturbation or take place at orgies, may be casual, may cross generational lines, and may take place in public, or at least in the bushes or the baths. It may involve the use of pornography, fetish objects, sex toys, or unusual roles. Now notice this phraseology that she uses here, cross-generational encounters, or individuals who prefer cross-generational relationships. This is her way of trying to normalize pedophilia. She says, as long as children consent, cross-generational encounters, she argues, basically, implicitly, are fine. She categorizes pedophiles in the same bucket that she categorizes gay men, meaning that, generations in the future will understand that pedophilia is a normal sexual orientation versus the sexual abuse of children that is empirically wrong and never right. She goes on to talk about this. She also talks about adult incest laws. She talks about how adult incest laws are wrong, how adult incest laws deprive people of their right to consensual sexual relations. And she finishes by saying, sexuality, like gender, is political. It is organized into systems of power which reward and encourage some individuals and activities while punishing and suppressing others, like the capitalist organization of labor and its distribution of rewards and powers. The modern sexual system has been the object of political struggle since it emerged, and as it has evolved. But if the disputes between labor and capital are mystified, sexual conflicts are completely camouflaged. She's arguing to bring this to the surface. So, as I said, pollutes the mind, does it not? However, it's really important for us to understand what she is saying, because what she is saying, she founded queer theory. Gayle Rubin founded queer theory. She was a lesbian into leather bondage. And not just on a personal level, she founded organizations dedicated to lesbian leather bondage. And she wrote this neo-Marxist thesis on queer theory, the principles of which are basically, there are four principles. This identity without essentialism, that children have no gender, that their identity is based on how they feel, and that there's nothing essential, there's nothing fundamental, there's nothing biological about their gender. That's maybe the first foundational thing. The second is transgression. The third is transgression being that there's nothing wrong with any sexual behavior as long as it's consensual. Resisting binaries is, the spectrum, the gender spectrum that our children are being taught. And social construction is this idea that sex is political, that sex can be taught to children the way that, well, people like these neo-Marxists want it to be taught that there is nothing inherent or trans-historical about it. These are the four fundamentals of queer theory. And so now go back to think about what your children are being taught. Your children are being taught that, you can be little Johnny who you want to be, AKA, this is really essential here, that you don't know who you are. They are being taught, your children are being taught that you don't know who you are because there's nothing God-given, there's nothing unalienable about you, that you can't tell who you are just by looking at your body. You can't tell that you're a boy because you have male genitalia. You can't tell that you're a girl because, you have a uterus and ovaries, that you can't. Your children are being taught that you can be who you want to be and that you don't know who you are. And that's so destructive, because if you don't know who you are, then you have to look for an identity. And if you're looking for an identity that's not based in reality, it's based on what you feel, then you can easily be manipulated into thinking that you feel the way that groomer teachers or organizations who stand to profit or neo-Marxists who are using this in the wider strategy to take over our society want you to feel. That's why these people are groomers. Secondly, they're being taught that nothing sexual, as long as it's consensual, is wrong. This destroys the moral fiber of our nation, as we all know, and leads our society down a path where childhood innocence is destroyed. Childhood innocence is a critical part of the family unit. It's a critical part of society. It's a critical part of the formation of right and wrong, the understanding of the reality that is around us. Now, again, this is what your child is being taught in school. They're being taught that there's no gender, there's no binary, it's a spectrum, that it's not based on biology, it's just identity, that sex is different than gender. And it all kind of makes sense that when we see what our children are being taught, and we understand that, okay, these are the principles of what? The principles of this ideological underpinning, which is queer theory.